So we had some questions over the lunch hour about, okay, well, what if the clouds move in, which, by the way, they are moving in. I don't know if you've noticed, here we're blessed with all these lakes in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and typically if you're going to have a sunny day or a sunny part of the day, it's going to be the morning. The heat comes along and it hits the lakes and the moisture evaporates and up into clouds, and so that's what's happening outside now. So that's why we say, for sure in our area anyway, get it on early. If you live in Phoenix or somewhere like that, you could probably start it as late as 1 or 2 in the afternoon. But over the years, it didn't take us long to realize, you know what, this is not a cloud cooker, it's not a rain cooker, and it doesn't work at night. It's not a moon cooker. It's a solar cooker, okay? So it's plan B and all those other things. So what do? Well, you know what? There are some very, very, very efficient wood stoves out there. And there's some that aren't so efficient, but there are some very efficient. I thought we had some literature on one of the companies that we're very familiar with. And it's a company, and I didn't find it. Maybe it didn't come. Anyway, the company is named Silverfire. And the gentleman that owns it worked a number of years. He headed up part of the stove division with a group called Aprovecho. Some of you might be familiar with them. It's out in Oregon. And he's located in Eugene, Oregon. And they have a wide variety from some simple, cheaper stoves all the way to some that will heat your home and everything in between. He just came out with a wood-fired pizza oven. And anyway, if you want an efficient wood stove, Silverfire is really a good one to at least take a look at. And there are several others.
When you say wood stove, do you mean just for heating or for cooking your food as well?
He's got cookers. He's got heating for your home. Some of the smaller ones would be good to heat fish house because they've got chimneys. Pretty much it covers the waterfront.
Do they all require a Class A chimney?
Oh, good question. That would be a local type thing, I believe. And some of the wood stoves, the cooking stoves don't have chimneys, so it'd be outdoors. Yeah. But they're stainless steel, especially the cooking stove. That's very important because you might get a stove that's working fairly good, but if it's not a stainless steel chimney, within a year or two, the chimney is usually history. So the more you can, cost is one thing, but quality is another, as knowing other things. So anyway, we encourage people to think in terms of integrated kitchens. If you think about all the gadgets you have at home, the appliances that you have to cook food with, you could just toasters and waffle makers and maybe a microwave, and you got a stovetop, and you got ovens, and the list can get kind of long. And you go off to these countries, and they've got a 3-stone fire, and that's it. And so inefficient, so smoky. They don't burn the wood efficiently. The more efficiently the wood is burned, the hotter the flame, the less pollution. So anyway, and then the third thing that we like, along with the solar oven and a good wood stove, is something we call, and Martha's going to show us here in a second. This particular model right here is a Wonder Bag. It's a retained heat cooker, and you can make one at home.
My mom, when we were kids, we would go to the Minnesota State Fair for a day every summer. And my mom would make a hot dish. She'd be up early in the morning, put a hot dish in the oven, and then she would get us kids up, and we would have breakfast and do dishes. And by the time we finished breakfast and the dishes, the hot dish was still in the oven. It was boiling at this point, but it was not fully cooked. And she would take the hot dish out of the oven, she'd put a lid on it, and then she'd wrap it up in a blanket or two, all around the hot dish. And she'd put it in the back of the trunk. And off we'd go and drive an hour and 15 minutes to the state fair. walk around the state fairgrounds all morning long. 12:30, we'd march back to the car, spread out the blankets, and sit down and eat a wonderful casserole for lunch. And we felt terribly deprived because we didn't get to buy from the vendors.
But at least they got to go to the fair.
But at least we got to go to the fair. That's what a heat-retained cooker will do. For my mother, it was blankets, and the blankets work well. This is a model made with some, it has a chunk of foam rubber on the bottom, and then each little chamber here is filled with chunks of a foam rubber. And you can see it's a big circle here. Let me get this. It's just a big circle of cloth with the various compartments sewn into it. Maybe shows up better on the red side than the blue. Okay? And the pot sits in the middle. Sorry about that, Michael. Glad it landed on carpeting. And here's a little pillow on the top of it. You put it on like that, and then you just draw the things shut again. Nice and tight. And food will stay nice and warm in here and or continue to cook for some hours. And this, in developing countries, saves a lot of fuel where the women just have to let it continue to simmer and simmer, especially when they're cooking beans, which is one of the major staples in developing countries.
So once the women get used to using that and the solar oven and the better wood stove, they can make a lot of food. Especially have 2 or 3 of these. So you get it hot, and you take it out, you put it in here. This finishes the cooking. This will keep it hot until people come in from the fields at night. And it's just a nice combination of things. Solar cooker, the wood stove, and the Wonder Bag. These can be made locally. We've got a gentleman in Haiti that we haven't reviewed his outcome here, but he's got 20 machines, sewing machines, and he's got a crew, and he's busy copying this. We're going to make some improvements so it's even better, and we're going to start ordering from him to supply people who are interested in that from the U.S.
How do you carry that when you've got a heavy hot dish in there?
You don't feel the heat because it's well insulated.
Pardon?
You don't feel the heat.
I'm not thinking of the weight, and you're gonna be
Oh, and how would I carry it?
walking around the fairgrounds with it.
We didn't. We left it in the car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you leave it in the car and cook it then?
Yeah. Once the food is at a boiling temperature and it's well insulated, so it might be at 212, it might be at 240, it might be at 275. Most Americans are using ovens at 325 or 350,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's hot.
yeah.
And so when you take that out of the oven and put it into something like this, that insulation holds that heat in, and the heat that is stored in the food itself continues to cook the food. It's especially effective with beans. When you cook beans, how long does it take you? All day, right? You start
Never
early in the
ends.
morning and they cook all day until it's dinner time at night, right? That's right. And it's no different, you know, I mean, there's different varieties of beans, but there are some hard beans that take a lot of hours to cook, to bake. You can pass it around if you want. I don't know if people are interested in seeing that or not.
So we've talked a lot about where we've been. Now we're talking about where we are. And I'd like to take a few moments to bring you up to date on where we hope to go with the Lord's help. And before I get into some specifics, I just take a moment and read one of the most beloved speeches perhaps ever in our country's history. And most of you will recognize it coming from JFK on his inauguration. But this is what we've been following as far as the intention of his prayer. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you're citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask of us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking His, God's blessings and His help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. That really summarizes a lot of what we're looking forward to doing. And there's one more I'd like to read. It was Theodore Roosevelt. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much because they live in a gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. So, what's next for us? I just had my 70th birthday this past winter, and we're looking forward to hopefully at least another decade of real active work. If it's more than that, that'll be wonderful. But we actually started a new nonprofit. We're calling it Global Innovative Solutions Teams, or GIST. And so what we've done, what we will do with these teams, we've picked out 2 or 3 initial problems that we feel the solutions already exist. It's just a matter of putting them together a little differently. And so those things that we're going to focus on is adequate water for everyone. There's already all kinds of, there's probably about 2,000 desalination plants around the world, some small and some large, and the Navy has them on their ships, whatever. We've been doing this desalination for several hundreds of years, some go back over 1,000 years. But the main holdback has been cost. Well, they've been bringing the cost of them down, especially now with more natural gas and whatnot for supplying the energy needed. But the Lord has given us some other ideas that we feel will reduce the cost of desalination plants around the world. And if you go over to the Middle East and places like that, you'll hear some of the leaders say, like in UAE, the United Arab Emirates, the leader there has said, you know, at this point of our country, water is more important to us than oil. And you look around, there's a looming crisis on water. And so we aren't running out of water, we're running out of fresh water. The oceans still are full of water. And I believe the Lord is just waiting for us to really take that, you know, take it and grab it and run with it and bring the cost down. And just imagine if we can bring that cost down and use the seawater, the sea salt that comes out of there, and we can figure out how to separate the salt part from the rest of the trace minerals that are present in that. Now the trace minerals can be used for fertilizer, for instance. That could be another profit center, if you will. We just touched base this past week with a group out of St. Paul. There's a organic gardening. You might have read about this in the paper several weeks ago. There's an organic gardening group, and they've partnered up with Pentair, who does equipment for this sort of thing. Anyway, they're going to actually have, they do have a garden inside the old Schmidt Brewery in St. Paul, and some of the space there, and they're growing vegetables, and they're growing fish. And I think they're looking at 225,000 trout within 2 years, 10-pounders. I don't know if they're going to open it up for fishing on the side.
Salmon.
Salmon, did I say trout? Salmon. Maybe they'll open it up for fishing on the side where we can go in and, no, I'm just kidding. But this is the second one that they've done, and these can happen all over the world. We've just got to rethink. We've got plenty of ways to grow food. We just have to rethink it. It doesn't all have to come out of a field necessarily. We can do vertical gardening. We can do gardening without natural light, although that's the best.
On rooftops.
And rooftops, there's just all kinds of things. We just got to open up our minds and allow the Lord to flood us with new ideas and not be afraid to try them. Second thing we want to do is reforestation. There's already some programs, different countries have started. The UN has a 1 billion tree program. Ethiopia has planted 10 or 20 billion. Numbers of companies or countries have already started this. So we're starting something called TNT, Trillion New Trees. Well, it is a lot. It sounds like a lot, it is a lot. But if you do the math, 50 years, 20 billion trees a year, that's 1 trillion trees. And you know, we've got to replace the trees that have been taken down. It's a huge problem to our environment if we don't do it. And we just want to call those people together that are already doing it. There's some groups, the ones we're going to focus on are groups that have already proven, they've got a track record to go with them, and they have gone into communities. They haven't paid the people, they've just simply trained them on how to start their own tree nurseries, when to plant the trees, how to care for them, and they've got now leaders in those communities thinking, you know what, if we take care of these trees, 5, 10, they don't take as long to grow as they do here. You know, that's going to be money in our pocket down the road. And now we'll have more trees to grow, to build more houses and do more things with. And then we're going to tackle some of the soot issues. That'll be our last problem. But we want to take experts that are out there already. Has anybody been to the Mayo Clinic? Okay. It's amazing what happens when you go there, isn't it? I mean, whatever you're there for, they surround you with different types of experts in that.
Teams of experts.
And they confer, and pretty soon they've got you on a different path than what you're on. And usually it's very helpful. Am I right? Yeah.
They look at the body as a whole.
As a whole.
The specific issue.
Condition, yep.
Exactly. So that's our idea here with these teams, to gather people from different aspects of the problem, get them together as a team, and come up with some solutions. Like I said, a lot of the solutions are already there. We just haven't quite found them yet. Anyway, so the practical side of what I'm talking about, we've become acquainted with a lady who grew up in Haiti. She's a nursing supervisor in New York City. She goes back to Haiti, to the village she grew up in, 2 or 3 times, as many times a year as she can. And she brings whatever she has found out back in the U.S. back to her village. We visited her village called Marion. It's right on the southern coast of Haiti. And there's only 56, 57 families, so it's very small, but it's compact. And we've been looking for a place like this really since we started. We didn't quite know it that way, but you know, a few ovens here and a few ovens there, and then 20 miles down the road, a few more. What we want to do is go into Marion, and we want to supply the families through crowdfunding or however. We've got some ovens already spoken for. We want to bring in good Zoller ovens, good wood stoves, and the Wonder Bags, along with some other things that we've been coming in contact with. Martha's going to show you a light that we have.
This is a solar light, $20 retail on the internet. Buying them in huge volumes, I think the price goes down to less than $10 per light. And it expands.
These make wonderful Christmas presents, night lights for seniors, camping. Lots of ways we can use them here in America. And they last for years. Just think, how do you learn how to read at night if you have no light to read by? This can be a reading light. This can be used in churches to have night services. It
has a handle on either end so that you can hang it and or carry it by hand. And it has 3 levels of intensity of light.
Other side.
1, 2, 3. And at the highest light, it's 60 lumens, more than adequate to read by. You can read by it at less than that even. It has a flasher if you need someone to be able to spot someone more easily as opposed to a constant light. And it will also tell you, it has 3 little cells there that will light up. It isn't a full charge right now. If it's a full charge, all 3 of them light up. And then as it goes down, it starts letting you know that, you know,
Powered
you
by
need
the
to recharge.
sunshine.
It will recharge even in cloudy weather, which is very nice. When we were in Haiti on our last trip, we put one of these in the restroom when the sun went down. 12 hours of darkness, more than 12 hours of darkness in January in the northern hemisphere. And we had it on low beam, and the light stayed on all night long, and anybody who wanted to find their way to the bathroom could find their way to the bathroom very easily. It's a very nice little light. You can punch the buttons. The one on the right is the one that will.
The name of it is Lucy Light, L-U-C-I, if you want to look that up. Maybe Wilderness Fellowship would like to be a distributor of it. Who knows? Oh yeah, there you go. Then this, part of the problem is that we encounter when we go out to these places, they really have depleted the fuel sources, the wood sources. Well, as most of you know, bamboo is the fastest growing plant. It's actually a grass, it's not a tree. But on land, this is the fastest growing plant of all. It's not as fast as kelp in the sea, but, and pound for pound. Now, I gotta be careful how I say that because it's hollow. But pound for pound, it's got the same amount of BTUs as an oak tree. So the energy's there, okay? It's how do we use it? So Martha's gonna show you our idea here.
This is a bamboo splitter. Okay? 4 sharp blades. Put that on a piece of bamboo, and then you hit it with a sledgehammer or a heavy maul, and you split the bamboo. And then it's ready for use in small, efficient wood-burning stoves that reduce the amount of required food, like for cooking, by 60, 70, 80%. And you can get it in 4 slits, or you can get it in 6 or in 8. So you can have different sizes of slits for you know, starting the fire initially, and or just using some larger chunks. But bamboo, some of the bamboo literally will grow 3 feet per day, if you can believe that. It's probably not this diameter, you know. But even smaller ones can be split. There's a lot that we have to learn on it yet, but it's been amazing what we have learned about bamboo. Some bamboo is invasive, obviously should be stayed away from. And then there are some that just grow in nice clumps and keep growing and keep producing, and you can harvest from it and it will produce more. The roots are established and it keeps producing. And I'm sure you probably throw some fertilizer on it periodically. So bamboo and bamboo splitters for the efficient wood burning stoves.
So what we're going to do in Marion, besides the wood stoves and the solar ovens and the Lucy lights, we're working with our friend to actually plant a bamboo garden, forest, I'm not sure what to call it, but it would be managed. It takes 2 or 3 years to get established, but once it's established, you're off to the races. And so we're going to arrange for payment for the land that we'll use, because it no longer will be used for tomatoes or whatever they're going to grow. That's going to be used for growing bamboo. So for those 2 years, we're going to compensate the landowner, but then the landowner will have a business if they run it right. They'll have a business of growing and selling this for firewood. And not just firewood. There's so many uses for bamboo.
The other one.
It's as strong as steel if you use it right. It's just an amazing plant. There's a group out of Illinois. It's a nonprofit called Kids Around the World. They recycle playgrounds. And these kids are like kids here. They, you know, if you throw out a soccer ball, you've got a crowd. If you put in a playground, you're going to have a crowd. And so the group, they work with churches in different locations. They've done over 100 of these in Haiti already. And all that we have to do is come up with the money to transport them. They will give the playgrounds to us. So we're going to put a playground in Marion. We're going to get some seeds, some flower seeds and whatnot. I don't care if you're poor or rich. Many people like flowers, and you know, why not? And things are easy to grow there. So the idea is to just surround them with God's love and God's
Provisions.
devices and provisions, and then stand back and work with them, encourage them to come up with their own ideas and whatnot, and just be partners with them, and let it work on that village, and let it expand from there. God tells us to not despise small beginnings, and we're not going to. We're just gonna start in Marion and see what happens. We've got actually 2 more countries with the same type of arrangements. Haiti will be the easiest. It's so easy to go from here to Haiti. You know, 4 or 5 hours total flights versus 14 hours, just one flight to get to Cambodia. You know, it's a big difference. But we need God's people to be involved in that, and we need God's people to ask God, what is it you want me to do? I want to work for you. I want to be a gimper for you. And you give him enough time and he will answer that prayer. And it'll be something that you will love, that maybe you hadn't even thought of. When we prayed, what do you want us to do? We didn't even know about solar ovens.
Yeah.
We didn't have a clue. And would what we're doing be for everybody? No, he's got something special for every one of us. But it's our responsibility, I believe, to ask him, what is it, God, what is it that you want me to do? And then patiently wait for the answer. And then when it comes, don't be afraid to do it. Just do it. Just like you built the Wilderness Fellowship place. This started out with one home, right? And you just kept, the vision got bigger and bigger, and look what you've got today. So I think that's the end of our presentation. Are there any questions that you have? We will stay in touch with you. Well, the cookers that you put together today, the 3 of them, are going to stay here. I don't know what exactly. Randy will be probably in charge of that. We want to stay in touch with you.
We have not.
But I hope that maybe you can have another time, a gathering where
He's
you
in charge of
you
that.
come up with a different menu maybe and try this or try that.
Is there cookbooks that you know, so many of the things that you talked about.
I want to answer Mark's questions about blending
Were,
herbs and
there's
spices
different
too.
ways of cooking with the solar cookers. Is there a good resource that you have that can be purchased that allows you then to, you know what not to add and what,
Yeah.
you know, just the differences?
Good question. So if you think of 2 things, actually there's a group called Solar Cookers International, and they have some cookbooks, and there's some
Page
information
10.
here.
Okay.
Has some solar cookbooks that are available. There are more than them now, than these now. And there's also a website where you can go free for solar recipes also.
But don't be afraid to use crockpot recipes.
Crock-pot recipes are good parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pull out your favorite crockpot recipe and try it.
And so is the cake.
The cake was not a recipe for solar ovens. It was a recipe my sister used, which she liked. She passed it along. We threw it in the solar oven, and voila. So
I was wondering about, you were going to comment on soup.
Yes, the spices. So you were asking about, blending garlic and curry, and all these things, what my thoughts would be on it. I'm kind of I'll just tell you my background first. I'm kind of just a throw it together. I'll look at a recipe and I'll think, yep, that sounds good, but I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, okay? So I don't follow recipes real closely. But for soup, if you like, kind of sauteing some garlic and some curry together, is that what I was hearing? Yeah. You might choose to still do that on a stovetop. I don't know. What I do know is that with the juices that come from the food, the blending of the herbs and spices happens wonderfully in solar ovens. So I don't have any real expert advice to give you on it, other than you can certainly try your normal method of sauteing it in a fry pan first and then putting it into a solar oven. Or you can try another time, trying it with just putting the spices in the solar oven and see how you think it compares to when you sauteed it. That type of thing. I'm not sure if I remember specifically all the questions you had there, but
Well, it's kind of whether you put it in, like whether you, and again, you've answered it, whether you put a saute it ahead of time, it's like a, if you were to make a roux or something of that nature, where you do it ahead of time, or if you put it all together and then just let the juices or whatever, as you do your chicken or your potato or whatever. And then even the other second part of that question was cutting up those vegetables. You say you were sure about cutting the vegetables smaller, they cook faster.
mm-hmm.
Yet you don't want mushy vegetables, like with your soup or whatever like that. If we were to take today's chicken and wanting to carry that over and make that more or less into like a soup rather than just the chicken, and just still keep it all together and the juice and things like that is kind of what I was thinking as far as cutting vegetables smaller and combining it all, just letting it go like a crock pot.
One of our first projects was in Nicaragua, in a community called Jinotega. And it was very fascinating. We made recommendations of recipes. We demonstrated the cooking. One of our staff members did it for us, Andrew. And the people caught on very quickly, and they were so amazed. The first thing he did before they even took the Gaylords off of the truck, which they don't have forklifts, and they lift it off by hand. So 450 pounds they're lifting by hand and setting it down to the ground. Okay? These guys are amazing. But before they even proceeded with anything, Andrew had brought one solar oven intact, okay, with him in that he checked in on the plane. And he paid someone to go bring a chicken, and they butchered it and put it in the oven, and someone had some potatoes and someone had some vegetables and whatever. And they started a meal. Then they started unloading the truck, and then they started unloading the Gaylord, our Gaylords, because there were 300 of them, so there would have been 12 Gaylords that they lifted off of the truck. And by the time they had lifted the stuff off of the truck and started opening them and started taking out some of the housings and so forth, well, it was lunchtime. Well, by that time, guess what? The chicken was cooked. And so these people that were doing this work all of a sudden started putting two together that, wow, this is what I'm unloading. This is what this thing does. And they were so excited. By the end of the day, almost everybody in that entire community had already heard about solar cooking. So they didn't even have to tell anybody, come and see it demonstrated or come and do this or that, Well, Michael always says that tasting is believing. And you can talk to people about solar cooking, but one of the best things you can do is cook for them and let them experience it themselves. We had friends from Zambia who came to the States to study, and they attended our church. we invited them over to sample some solar cooking. Well, they were pretty amazed, you know, and they came a couple more times and we ate solar cooked food also. And then Michael said, now the next time you come, you bring Zambian food and we're going to cook Zambian food in the solar cooker. So they came with their, was it pork or beef? I don't remember, some meat. They came with, there were 4 items in their menu. I don't remember them now. It's so many years ago at this point. No, not ostrich. But anyway, the 4th thing they were going to do was called enchima. In some countries it's called ugalis. In some other countries it has every country in Africa has their name for corn mush. Okay? So it's cornmeal that you just cook with some water. Some people like it thicker, some people like it thinner. And they said, oh no, that won't work in the solar oven. It has to be in boiling water and you have to stir it. It won't work, you know. And Michael actually talked longer and harder than I did. And he said, you know what? Hold it. You know what? Maybe it's not going to work, but we're going to let the solar oven tell us if it's not going to work. Okay? So he said, how much water and how much meal? And Edward and Christina just looked at each other and they didn't know. Because they just fill their pot to whatever level of water they know they need. And then they just dump in the cornmeal until it's the consistency that they want. So they had no idea. So I said, well, we had 2 or 3 cardboard cookers which holds 4 pots in them. And I said, well, let's just use one of the solar ovens for enchima. And in one pot we put 40% meal, 60% water. In the second pot we put 50% meal and 50% water. In the third pot we put 60% meal and 40% water. And we put them out in the solar oven. And we didn't do any huge quantity because we didn't know what was going to work. I think I might have used the equivalent of just a cup. So it was just barely covering the bottom of the pot. And indeed it cooked very quickly. So after 50 minutes of time, you know, their curiosity was really piqued. And they said, can we go look? And we said, well, yeah, let's go see. And we went out there. And I tell you, if people's eyeballs could jump out of their eye sockets, their eyeballs would have been right down there in those pots. And they were just astounded. And immediately they put their hands down into the pots. And what they do is they take that cornmeal mush and they make like a ball, kind of an oblong shape in their hands. And then they dip it into different sauces and bite and dip and bite again and dip and bite again. And that's how they, most of the times they eat their enchima. Well, the 60% water and the 40% meal did not work. The 50-50 was semi-okay for them. The 60% meal and the 40% water was the better mixture for them. And they said, wow, now we know our people will like the solar cookers because it will cook their staple. And so there's always something to learn. There's always something to experiment with. And the key is not to prejudge the solar oven, but let it tell you what it can do. And you have in the manual some guidelines about what are variables for the most ideal or the lesser ideal conditions. What we have not shown you yet is we refer to this as our summer angle, the 30-degree angle, okay? Winter months, you know, beginning of October, middle of October, through getting into the end of February, we cook like this. Now, we can't use the pots that we use today. We have to use smaller pots because there's not as much depth on the floor of the back, you know, but we can put 3 smaller pots across, and in some ways that's an advantage over 2 pots if you want to keep things separated. But this is our winter angle, And when you think about the low angle of sun, you know, basically the sun never gets higher on December 21st than about that angle. And that comes in just directly into the oven and still works wonderful miracles. The hardest time of year to cook is around equinox, when you have 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of night. And the reason why I always think that it's harder at that time of year is because this is not the best angle, neither is this the best angle. So in the fall, when it's October, into the beginning of October, middle of September onward, we start tipping the oven like this and setting something under its back so that it tips up and catches more of the sun. You know, put a brick underneath there. That really helps the angle. And then when that doesn't work anymore, then we turn it on the 60 degree and we cook on the 60 degree. One of these has, I don't know if you saw it or not, did you see the picture of a solar oven sitting in the snow? I don't know if it's in here. I'll see if I can find it, but we set it right out in the snowbank and it cooks. It cooks wonderfully.
We've got albums up here if you'd like to come up after and look through those. But basically, as we've said before, the best solar oven hasn't been invented yet. Maybe one of you will come up with a better model. In the meantime, be blessed. Thank you.
What do these units sell for to the people, like down in Haiti? If somebody wants to buy it?
The developing country price today is $145, and that's everything. And numbers of groups, what we'll do is we'll come up with a Haitian price. They have to pay something, okay? And maybe it's $50, maybe it's $70, and then we make arrangements, $5 a month or whatever, until it's paid off. And then we'll have a sponsoring family back here for the balance. And then ideally, whatever money goes into that fund goes back towards helping another family get started. So we want them to keep that money in the community as much as possible.
That's great.
We got a ways to go here, yeah.
Were you gonna tell us or show us how to make a cardboard one?
Yes.
There was a handout. but
No,
did that-
I forgot to tell it while we were around this.
I thought there was a handout up on the.
Yeah, it was up there, but I thought I brought it over
it's
here.
on the
Yeah, here it is.
side. Oh,
I did bring it over here. You can pass that around. It's in 4 pieces of paper, and so I just take, we had this published in the center of a newspaper, like so, okay? So in order to print it out so that it's still readable, one page will say top half of large first page, bottom half of first large page, and then top half of second large page and bottom half of second large page. And then you can tape it together and just fold it in half like I did and we'd be able to put it into a file. It's fun to do. I've probably done 30 of them in my day, but I can tell you it's very labor intensive.
This is not a technical question,
Yeah.
but what word should I use? What triggered you people to start this ministry?
Michael just prayed for something that we could work together on as a couple
How long ago?
in 1988.
1980?
So next year would be 30 years.
Yeah, wow.
And about 2 months later, that's about 2 months later when we were up visiting my father in Bemidji around Christmas time, here's an article in the local paper about the 2 fellows going down to Nicaragua, Guatemala, I guess it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And one of them was
That's how it
from
started.
One was from Pillsbury. We got back to the cities, called the gentleman up, and we had our first meal, solar cook meal at Feed My Starving Children, April 15th of 1989. And so we've just been doing it ever since.
For the first 5 or 6 years, we would take 1 or 2 of our personal weeks of vacation and traveled to different countries where people were interested to have us come in and had invited us. And basically, primarily to see, is this really a true need? Do people really need that much help with just being able to cook their food? And it's major. I would not want to spend 20 hours a week gathering fuel, let alone 40 some hours a week. There's no way in the world that I'd be interested in doing that. That's hot. Penny said to me, she said, Martha, you have no idea what this is going to mean to the psyche of women also. She said, when they go out, they're in the hot sun, they're working so hard, they don't have deodorant to use, they reek like crazy from body odor, they come back with all the dirt falling off of the bark, and the dirt that got on the logs while laying on the ground and tying them up to put them on top of their heads. And they have all this dirt sticking to their hot, sweaty bodies, and they just get back and they have to go on and work further to go get water and to go out to the garden and then to cook a meal over a hot fire. And then they start the next day the very same way. She said their husbands don't enjoy being with them when they're like that. And someone asked one of our friends, well, how is it, how is, multiple wives accepted? And they said, well, it's basically no big deal. The woman has worked so hard for so many years, and her body is totally exhausted. She's happy to have her husband get another wife so that she doesn't have to work as hard. And I'm sure that that is a very practical reality of what does transpire.
I'd like to give you a happy ending to Penny's story.
Yeah.
She was not able to go to school until she
Oh.
was, 12 or 14 or whatever. She wanted to go to school in the worst way. So here she is. And by the time she could go to school, her father decided to move to Nairobi, because if she stayed in the village and having not gone to school until then, the village wouldn't accept her anymore if she went to school. Okay, I don't begin to understand all this. Anyway, she ended up coming to the States. Today she has her doctor's degree. She is a family counselor in Birmingham, Alabama. And she still prays for Kenya. She doesn't dare go back there because her husband threatened to kill her if she came back. But she had to get away from him. He was abusing her and almost killed her several times.
And the priest of her Episcopalian parish arranged for her to come to the States. In fact, it wasn't just the priest of the local parish, it was their diocese, or whatever they would call it. It would be their diocese leader or whatever, arranged for her to come to the States so that she would not be killed by her husband. She had worked for him for numbers of years. But
she
every
just-
year she would cry. She would just cry, Dad, can I please go to school this year? I want to go to school so bad, Dad. I want to learn how to read. Won't you let me go to school? She would just cry because she wanted to go to school so much.
So Dr. Njoroge loves the Lord so much. Maybe
Yeah.
someday, if you're interested, when she comes up to visit us, we can bring her up here.
Oh, yeah. I have another cooking question.
Yes.
And again, the meal this afternoon was really, really fantastic. My wife always, matter of fact, just last night, she chides me, she said, maybe you should just use pepper and garlic and Tabasco, and then, eat that by itself, because you can't taste the flavors of the food. So, yeah. But yeah, so I like putting things on adding to my food.
Yeah.
The flavor of the chicken and the mushrooms and onions was it was really very, very good. My question is, though there wasn't much salt in there.
No, there was
Okay.
no salt in there.
Right.
There was no pepper in there.
If I wanted to add salt and pepper, wouldn't that take away from drawing out more moisture out of it? And so do you kind of prefer not to add things like that to that? I know with adding pepper, you have to be somewhat careful because how spicy you can make it, especially in that, heating, type environment like that.
When it's just the two of us, then we do more of that. But if it's a new group, we want you to taste the food the first time around.
And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was just curious whether or not the effect of salt would be on
Salt
the
will
dish.
draw more moisture out of the food,
You know, when we peak,
but it also enhances the flavor.
is we add things usually then. We let some of the juices come out first.
For years, Michael has high blood pressure, so for years we avoided salt and really did a tremendous amount of cooking, even if it was a rainy day indoors, without using any salt. Now he uses sea salt and will literally take a pinch of salt and eat it several times a day. With the additional trace minerals in there, he feels much, much better, and his blood pressure is lower. So, our bodies need salt, and most of us are told, well, we get plenty of it in canned goods and so forth, but you know what, we hardly ever eat canned goods. We don't eat much processed food. So, we evidently were not getting enough salt for Michael. But a great sea salt with the trace minerals in it also has really been a plus for Michael.
If you got any readers in here, a wonderful book to get a hold of is called Sea Energy and Agriculture by Dr. Murray. Sea Energy and Agriculture, it's just an eye-opener. It talks about how much healthier things that are grown in the ocean are than things that are grown on land, and how much of the trace minerals that are in the ocean now used to be on the land. So things that we call organic today aren't like organic 100 years ago, and it just deals with a lot of that, including pH levels. Ocean water is alkaline, fresh water is just slightly acidic. There's all kinds of goodies in there, and it's a fun read. So maybe get it maybe we can get a copy and send it to you. I don't know. Okay, well, you've been a wonderful audience, and we hope to see
We
you
don't
again.
want to cut you short, but
No.
if you have questions, we'll answer them. If you want to be on your way, you can.
We'll be here to answer questions.
We've shared what we brought to Bridget.
And please look through